Me again? Okay. Thank you, Chris. It is now my distinct pleasure to present the Ricks Award for Community Citizenship to an individual who has, without question, made a huge and indelible impact on our community, and he has redefined the business of real estate in our region and well beyond. And that individual is my dear friend, and probably the dear friend of everybody in this room, our dear friend, Bob Rennie. Bob's commitment to giving back is evident in every day, and one of the biggest and most recent gestures was handing over of the Wing Sang building, the oldest structure in Vancouver's Chinatown, which was home to the Rennie Art Collection and Rennie Group offices for many, many years. On July 1st, 2024, the building became home to Canada's first Chinese-Canadian museum, a must-see attraction for locals and tourists. This year will mark Bob's 50th year in real estate and 50 years of the Rennie Group, where Bob's leadership and vision for strategy, innovation, and marketing have benefited the real estate industry and allowed him to pursue community building and philanthropic endeavors near and dear to him. In addition to real estate, Bob has had a strong passion for the arts, having assembled Canada's largest contemporary art collection, which has been recognized as one of the top 200 collections in the world for its masterpieces that explore social justice. He sits on numerous boards, including saying yes when I asked him to join us at VGH and UBC Hospital. Thank you, Bob. And was most recently named chairman, I heard Ali over there, and was most recently named chairman of the Collections Committee at the National Gallery in Washington, D.C. Yes, absolutely. In his thought leadership and in his advocacy, he also leads very important discussions about what kind of society and economy that we ought to pursue. And many of you will recall when he interviewed Hillary Clinton in front of 5,000 people. Nobody does it like Bob. He is an incredibly engaged and engaging advocate, and he epitomizes the successful entrepreneur who carefully discharges his responsibility to try and make things better for his fellow citizens. Let's take a look at this video to learn more about Bob and his community contributions.
I tend to be overly involved in real estate, art, and politics, and any one of those occupy a full life. Everyone says they have a passion, but a passion has to turn into a skill set, or it is nothing more than a hobby.
He is kinetic, he is energetic, he is passionate. There is only one Bob Rennie, and we who know him are lucky that he is ours.
If I go to an art fair, people hear I'm from Vancouver, the first thing they ask me is, do you know Bob Rennie?
Whenever I have friends who want to sell real estate, they don't ask me what I want, what I think of the market. They want to know what Bob thinks of the market.
Well, he is a treasure of information, there's no question about it, and he's been giving talks about the future of housing, looking back at the past of housing, the history of housing, for decades. And he's always been insightful and looking ahead. He's
a visionary, he's strategic. When he has an opinion or says something, people want to hear what he has to say.
People, they want to do something, invest in Vancouver. Bob's the place they go to for advice.
Whenever the press or some senior politician want to know something about housing or real estate, everyone will call Bob, and he always know how to put an angle to make things interesting on a boring subject. That's his magic, right?
Mention the name Bob Rennie and you immediately think real estate data, marketing genius. What stands out for me about Bob is his overflowing generosity, his commitment to supporting artists, creating galleries, the preservation of Chinatown's history, philanthropic organizations, too many to list, and his love for this city.
Is a phenomenal community leader. He has set the bar so high. Bob has contributed greatly from an arts perspective in terms of sharing the great things that he's been able to gather in terms of his artwork to the National Gallery, whether he's donated a building, like Wing saying, and then Bob has given his time. And I think that, you know, the most precious thing that we all have is our time.
His time, but it's not just time, it's his passion, right? The time spent in art is not just about art, right? It's really about artwork that's give a voice to the people with no voice.
There are few people on this planet with his commitment to justice, to equality, to the idea that everyone deserves to live with dignity.
Social justice, beauty, giving people who didn't have a lot of power a platform and a voice, but he was doing it all really from a place of generosity and empathy. In fact, a lot of the good he's done has been, you know, completely in stealth mode.
He treats his giving back to the community as part of his soul, as part of his being. And he doesn't ask for anything back in terms of what he gives to the community. Love it.
Vancouver have given me a voice. If you have a voice, use it for all, not just for yourself.
Bob lives by the golden rule, and we all, during these difficult times, could learn by watching Bob Rennie.
Please welcome the recipient of the 2025 Ricks Award for Community Citizenship, friend and connector of all, Bob Rennie.
Thank you very much. If I can just get my notes, because I can't read a teleprompter. I could go so many places because I've heard so many other things as everybody else spoke. I just want to make sure that Sean Gill, I only hope one day our corporation is able to be as generous and community-minded as you. Oh, sorry, I did not talk to Juggy's mother, sorry. I hope you heard part of that. But Sean Gill, I only hope that our company one day can give back the way that you do and participate in the community. I'm absolutely humbled. And Juggy Sahoda, I think the Board of Trade is so fortunate to have you. I don't know where you find the time to do everything that you do, but you just do it at such a level that I could only wish that I could do the same one day. So I didn't get the memo on quite what to talk about, so I am going to drag you through a life that you may be interested, you may not be interested in, but you don't know me, and I don't know all of you intimately. So the adages, the phrases that I've come up with over the last 50 years, I put in Bobisms, and we put it on everybody's table, and it's what informs me. So now I'll go through my writing. But Juggy, thank you for your kind words. I'm going to try and give back some of the love that I'm receiving tonight. Juggy, making your words even more special, and I am beyond humbled to accept an award that David McLean also accepted. And I know that Jason was going to be here tonight. I've sat on boards with his mom, Brenda, and they're just a very special family. And again, I am humbled. I also couldn't ask to be in finer company than the past 15 recipients. I have 14 of their personal cell numbers, and I do pride myself and judge people on whoever dies with the most names in their Rolodex or on their iPhone wins. To Laurie Ricks, thank you so much for carrying on Don's legacy. I only met your dad a few times, but I also just want to give a shout out to Neil McRae, Laurie's husband, who's no longer with us. In about 2004, I used to do ads with Neil I'm lazy, Neil's lazy. They were unedited, unscripted, and it is truly a memory of mine on this journey. So just a shout out to Neil for Laurie. And Laurie, you're the one who should be getting the award for what you do for everybody. I wanted to find a way to share a journey of a guy from East Vancouver, no grade 12, I'm blind in one ear, I'm blind in one eye. I am blind in one eye, I'm deaf in one ear, and known for having the most parking tickets in the city ever. And I wrote this, but I don't do jokes very well, but if somebody's filming this, perhaps you could qualify me for Lauren Siegel's Courage to Come Back. As Juggy said, I'm the guy that interviewed Hillary Clinton in front of 5,000 people. What happened is 3 months prior to it, Secretary Clinton's team, whom Aberdeen and everybody phoned and said, would I do this? They didn't want a celebrity, a journalist, or a politician. And some of the proceeds were going to Breakfast Club of Canada, something I support. A week later, they phoned back and said, no, we want a woman. And I said, I'm not going to argue with the Clinton dynasty. And then 3 weeks before, they started to phone my EA and make it clear that I wasn't part of the $100 million donation that Frank gave to the Clinton Foundation, because they didn't want any conflict with what Bill does and what Hillary does. But what Juggy didn't tell you is I interviewed her for the book, and I did not read the book. I thought, oh, I'll just go through the back, and I'll pick out pizza oven, I'll pick out emails. And I was in Seattle the week before, and my plane was canceled. And Air Canada it actually came online before they had told me at the airport. And in the bookstore at the airport, I found a little half magazine, Teen Vogue, completely edited by Hillary Rodham Clinton. So I hired an Uber to get me home, and I read through that, and I based the whole interview on it, and I aced it. It went really well, and I made her cry at the end. I won't go into that now. But the song that they played for me as I walked up here was George Harrison's If Not For You. The song was selected and was played very deliberately. If not for you, if not for so many of you in this room. And I just thought that the song would be appropriate, and it's a bit of a theme through my words. But if not for Bridget Anderson, thank you very much for what you do for the city and phoning me and allowing me to accept this award. To Walter Pela, Walter has a very special place in my heart and with his family. And Walter, as chair, getting me up here. I don't know how many names you went through before you got to the Condo King, but thank you very, very much. And to Rosine and the team at the board for putting on this amazing evening, thank you for this. If not for you, Stu McNish of Conversations Live for the video, thank you for this. My kids are all here that basically will just use that for the eulogy, and that'll take out some stress off my family. My observation is that life is just like a roulette wheel. The kids, as I am, we are roulette crazy. We love to gamble. But you soon realize that roulette has nothing to do with any accumulative effect. It's merely probability that your number may come up. Yet most of our friends, most of your friends, may only be aware of one or two of your achievements. Yet tonight, I defied all the odds, and a number of my contributions were recognized and added up. So I am standing here so proud and so honored, and thank you for this. The video, Stu sent me the video 2 weeks ago. I refused to watch it until we could all watch it together. I want to try and tie those Bobisms that I left on everybody's table to the video. It was a little abstract, but when we had the museum in Chinatown, a visitor cornered one of our docents and said, "What's it like to work for Bob? What's Bob like?" And the docent answered, "Oh, there's the people that know Bob, and there's the people that don't know Bob." And that applies to everybody in this room. There's the people that know us, and the people that make assumptions about us. And I am just so honored that I'm giving you a chance to get to know me. It feels arrogant, but I just want to walk you through a bit. And so my Bobisms have been accumulated over the last 50 years. This is so that you might get to know my journey better. I've already said that. But some of my philosophies that built our companies and infiltrated our family. My friends don't come with instructions. I had 450 people down to watch the US election, and 30% of the room were with Trump and 70% of the room with Kamala Harris, and nothing applied better than my friends don't come with instructions. We're not going to solve any of this unless we all find a way to sit at the table together. And it's a very important line in my life. But I just could not imagine how much love was in the video, but I assumed that Stu would not produce a negative video. But what I realized is I'm the opposite of that. Is none of those wonderful people in the video made me come with instructions. And it's such a pleasure to call everybody on their friends. I want to start with Joy McPhail, one of the funniest humans I know and the best laugh ever. I interviewed Joy McPhail, Carol Taylor, and Janet Austin in front of 500 people for the Urban Development Institute. And I asked Joy a question, and she called me on stage a gossipy bitch. And I wear it as a badge of honor, because I am. Carol Taylor, one of the greatest policy and political minds that I know. We do try and have lunch once a month. And for years, we had a policy that Carol was not allowed to pay unless she told me who she was sleeping with. And Stu McNish is here tonight. Michael Ardane. Michael Ardane, I bet you're all very surprised that Michael and I are dear friends, given my stand on the Vancouver Art Gallery, which I don't talk about anymore, but I am right now. Michael and Yoshi really are our country's greatest cultural philanthropists, and they're here tonight, and I'm just so honored to call them friends. Terry Huey, the more I spend time with Terry, the more I have come to realize that arguably Terry has the highest IQ in the city. And he doesn't tell you he does. You witness it, that he does. And I actually talked him into taking a tiny piece of an edible in New York a few weeks ago. I don't drink. Larry Van Hatten, my CFO of over 40 years, and friend and mentor to my son. Larry is our family consigliere. And I'm like Wayne Gretzky. I know how to play hockey, but I don't know to do a lot else. And Larry has guided our family forever. And thank you, Larry, and thank you, Bev. Juggy Sahota, thank you again. You are maybe the best salesperson ever. Juggy asked me to come on the board of Vancouver General Hospital Foundation and said, I don't need you to do anything. You don't have to come to a meeting. Just do what you're doing for cardiology. 6 months later, I am the chair of major gifts, and Juggy left. So I don't, so that's the persuasiveness of Juggy. And Darren Walker, one of America's most balanced, inspirational voices on social justice, probably the most pragmatic, measured human that I've had the privilege of calling my friend. With a number of boards I sit on in America, with social justice, with what's happening to EDI right now, Darren is my imaginary board of directors and has helped me for years through this rocky territory of inclusion. And I'm just so honored to call Darren my friend. So thank you to all of you for all of this. And then there's Lynn Zettel. This really is, if not for you, shit. Just give me a minute. I was going to say at the beginning, this will make get me out of this. I apologize if I cry, and I apologize if I don't cry. And it actually comes from the movie The Fabulous Baker Boys, where Jeff Bridges, in a naked bed scene with Michelle Pfeiffer, says, I apologize if I get aroused, and I also apologize if I don't. So, Lynn Zettel, Lynn is my psychiatrist, and she has been my psychiatrist since 1992. Lynn was a psychologist when I started. Lynn now lives in Maui, grossly overpaid. And I know my kids are all over here, and they're thinking since 1992, it's just not working. When in Vancouver, every Sunday morning, I leave the house with a cup of coffee in my hand. Carrie often walks with the dog behind me from 9 till 10:30. I walk from my home, Granville Island, to Chip Wilson's, and I pay homage. But when I walk to Chip's and Summer's house, I always ask Lynn the same question before I turn around and walk home. And I say to my God, why couldn't I have invented stretchy pants? But even I like that one. But seriously, Lynn and I talk 45 to 48 Sundays a year, no matter where I am in the world. While everyone else in the video allows me to be me, Lynn taught me to be me, and I'm forever thankful. Now, more of, if not for you, I'd be nowhere at all, my family. My family's here tonight, and stealing a line from Juggy is, can you imagine being in my family? And it's the first time ever my family's all been together when I'm receiving an award, and I am so honored, and I consider this probably the most special award I will ever get, so thank you. But I know when we're all at the mother of my children's house this Saturday for Easter that I am in such shit and are going to have to put up with it. So first, let's start with my sister-in-law, Muddy, who is here tonight. It was 1975. Muddy and my beautiful brother-in-law, who is no longer with us, Yoshi, waited for months until I got my real estate license at 19, and they waited to be my first sale. And what happens with something like that, yes, it's family, and yes, they want to let you earn money, but Muddy and Yosh let me show them 20 or 30 homes, and it gave me that first piece of confidence that, hey, I can do this. I don't have grade 12. I know you don't want to listen to me for so long, but I'll tell you a really quick story. My mother left my father 17 times from age 10 to 17, and half the time she'd take the furniture. But the last time she said, I'm selling the house. And I sat at the table with a realtor from Block Brothers, and I wish I could remember his name. And she made him a chocolate cake and coffee. And he said, oh, the house next door sold for $33,000. The house behind sold for $33,000 because it's on a 33-foot lot. But your neighbor, the same as you, sold for $38,500 because you have a 42-foot lot. And I thought, wow, I was a smart kid. I don't need historical data. I can work on current data. And I sent away for my bartender's license and my real estate license. And the real estate license came first. I'm often asked what would happen if the bartender license came first. And I tell Richard Jaffrey I would own Cactus Club. So, but back to Muddy, thank you. Mieko, the mother of our children, is here. It was 1988, and I would never have opened a real estate office had it not been for Mieko. Mieko came home and said, I found 1,200 square feet at Sperling and Hastings, and it's time to do it. And we did it, and never looked back. Mieko eventually gave up being a dental technician to run the office and stabilize it while the company grew. But a saying that Mieko found that is in your Bobisms, and credit Miyako found it, is a man that adheres to a position previously stated when times change is an idiot. And it's something that I practice daily. We're all computers. We're on a path, but as new information comes in, it has to reinforce the path you're on, or you have to change the path you're on. And as humans, we don't like change, but it's probably an adage that has helped grow the company and get me up to this stage. So thank you, Miyako. If you ever see me with one of my kids, I will always tell you this is my favorite. This is the favorite that is with me at the time. Stephanie, Katie, and Chris are here, along with their respective spouses. Sean, Marco, and Coco, and our 6 grandchildren are at home. A quick description of our relationships. Katie, with her Bachelor of Science degree in hand, gets her first job at Vancouver General Hospital. 5 weeks into it, Katie phones me and says, I don't like it, I'm going to quit. I said to Katie, was there an incident? She said, no. And I said, you are the smartest person in the family then. That ability to make a change and recognize what's not working for you. Stephanie, the kids lived with me on weekends and had to call me at midnight and tell me what was going on. Stephanie phoned me at midnight and said, what time do I have to be home? I said, I don't know, 4 o'clock. She said, you have horrible parenting skills. I'll be home at 1:30. But I used to always tell the kids, the reason you don't live with me is you don't have to go to school, you don't have to brush your teeth, and you don't have to go to bed. That's why you do not live with me. And Chris, what can I say? Chris has IQ and EQ. With Chris, it may not have started as early as it did with me, but I ran my family's finances from 10 years old. I would go to the post office or the drugstore with cash in hand and get money orders to pay our phone bill and to pay our electrical bill. My parents never had a bank account until I was 17 years old. So without Chris, we would all be working at Katie and Marco's bakery. Chris has come into a leader. He snuck in. Miyako said to me one day when Chris was 22, he's taking his real estate license. But he did it for himself. He didn't do it for me. And he just snuck into the business. And he's our dad. And frankly, Wes and I are very afraid of Chris. But I don't have a bank account. I don't take mail to the house. Chris runs my life. And I thought it's different that my parents were crazy, and now Chris is going, no, you guys are crazy. But so if not for them, I do mark as the greatest accomplishment is my children, and that we all know each other, and we have a reciprocal arrangement. It's in the Bobisms. I'm not allowed to be me unless you are allowed to be you. And then there's Carrie folks. Can you imagine being my ex? Without Carrie, I honestly have no idea where the collection would be. I can often be heard saying that I'm in charge of acquisitions and Carrie manages the collection. Well, Carrie, when we met in 1996, he pushed my eye and gave me the confidence, not unlike my sister-in-law, Muddy, that you can do this. And he supported my every art move and paved my way into museums, so that people like Darren Walker could become one of my dear friends, and built a collection of over 4,000 works of art, which we will start to give away next month to the National Gallery of Canada. So Chris runs the family, but Chris runs the business, but Carrie runs the family, all of us. So I'm sure the family are rolling their eyes back and going, why? But it's simple. I just don't want anyone in this room to think I could possibly do this myself. If not for you, Wesley, my boyfriend, my partner is here with me, and he's been in my life and my family's life for 5 years. Just a quick story. Wesley and I had been together for about a year. It was my 65th birthday. We were at my son's house. And I said, Wesley, I'll pick you up. And he goes, no, I'll meet you there. And I said, Wesley, don't bring balloons and shit. Just don't do that. My family don't like that. And my son said to me, he's got courage. And then my daughter said, it's a bit weird, but I think it'll be okay. Wesley arrives only a year into the family with a guitarist, a microphone, and a speaker, and sings the song we met over. I cried through the whole thing, and then Wesley said, and Bob loves his family, and then sang another song. My family are Japanese. There's no hysteria and pop the champagne bottles. Wesley just exposing himself to them gets a very... and welcome to the family. But Wesley really is the reason I want to come home early every afternoon. So could you imagine being my partner? So thank you for this, Wes. And a big if not for you, my dear friend Tracy McTavish is here. You know, when you thank Tracy, I have to thank Mary Ann too, because Tracy came on as the president of our company from Terry Huey, which is a whole business story in itself. Tracy has retired now, but Tracy came over 10 years ago or so, jumped into the company and the chaos, but what Tracy did is he allowed me to be me, and it's very special. Thank you, Tracy. And I would love, I'd love to mention everybody in this room, but the band's waiting, so I'll try to bring this to an end, but it'll take a few more minutes. I want to tell you an art story, but first I was debating, do I tell you a story about Bobby Kennedy, do I tell you a story about Ryan Reynolds? And I'm going to tell you the story about Bobby Kennedy. James Riley, who's involved in environmental and sustainability, had introduced me to Bobby Kennedy, and I'd been to lunch a few times, and I'll call him an acquaintance. I do have his cell number. He was here speaking on green energy, and I had about 120 people to the house. Elizabeth May's there, David Suzuki, a lot left of center. And I said to Bobby, I said, everybody here is on the green side. I said, CNN is doing the Kennedys, and he said he hates that. I said, but why don't you tell us an inside story about the Kennedys? So in our house, he stands on the third stair where we always have people speak and stand, and you could hear a pin drop. He's a nut job, but, but he's a Kennedy. And Bobby stood on the stairs, and the first thing he said is, maybe this 200-year experiment with democracy has come to an end. And just the hairs on your arm just stood up, referring to all lives matter, white supremacy matters too, where we're going south of the border. But then he said, Bob wants me to tell you a story about the Kennedys. So he said in 2003, 2004, my best friend is Larry David from Curb Your Enthusiasm. I'm married to Cheryl Hines, Larry David's wife, on Curb Your Enthusiasm. And we flew down to the Democratic Convention in Florida. And in 2003, 2004, we met a guy we liked named Barack Obama. Spent some time with him, and Larry said, why don't we give you a lift in our plane back up to the eastern seaboard? He was going to Red Bluff, which is a resort that is frequented by wealthy black Americans. And on the plane, Bobby Kennedy said, you know, the leader of Kenya, and I believe his name's Tom Oyama, in 1959, 1960, got 200 scholarships to Canadian and American universities. Tom Oyama, leader of Kenya, went to then Vice President Nixon and said, I need $200,000 to get these boys here. Nixon said, the last thing America needs is another poor black man. No. And then he heard about Joseph Kennedy and the Kennedy Foundation, and he approached Joseph Kennedy, and Joseph Kennedy said right away, Bobby's grandfather, yes. And he said, but I don't want you to mention it to anybody that we gave it to you, because John F. Kennedy may take a run for the presidency, and this would hurt him in the South. And Bobby Kennedy said to, or sorry, Barack Obama said to Bobby Kennedy, how do you think my father got here? And I use it as a story often, that we don't know what connection is going to be made in this room. We don't know who has a grandchild that is going to have a baby that's going to solve all this shit on the planet. But it's it was just remarkable to me that that's how small the world is, that Barack Obama's father came to America because of the Kennedys. And then Bobby stayed for about an hour, and I walked him out to the car, and I said, give me a hug. And I said in his ear, I said, you're a Kennedy and you're different. And he pulled back and he said, what? What do you mean? And I said, you have a different calling than us humans. Upstairs in my office at home, an hour before he spoke, Cheryl Hines said, my 48-year-old brother just died. I said, you didn't drop the mic, you didn't run to the airport, you stayed, you did what you're supposed to do, and you stayed an hour. And I use this for everybody in politics. All of us in business, we find a second or third place. But when you go into politics with social media today, my son's saying is you can never win over more than 51% of a room. And the dedication and the exposure that the politicians in this room put them through should be humbling to all of us. And we're all armchair strategists, and we throw negatives at them. But maybe instead of saying a negative about a politician, get in touch with them and tell them what they could do different. Because I think that we're not going to get there unless, again, as I said earlier, unless we all work together. I will tell you my last story, an art story. We went to Paris to buy a painting by Artemisia Gentileschi from the 1500s, not what we usually do, but she was raped by her artist father's studio assistant and fought it in court and was extremely, extremely tortured for it. And I wanted a painting with blood in it. And this painting of Lucretia was the auction house, and the auction house said, go over to the conservator. And we went to the conservator, and the conservator said, let's take it outside. I said, it's raining. And he said, no, all art must be looked at in the light it is painted in. And I use this for humans. We're so quick to judge by the color of skin. We're so quick to judge by they're not like us. Well, they don't want to be like us. And I think that we must look at all people in the light they were painted in and understand why they do what they do and why their culture is like their culture. And that's all I have to say. And I will tell you, out of all the Bobisms, the only one you're going to remember is 4% of the world are assholes, and we spend 96% of our time working around them. Thank you.